Excited to be here on this Friday with you. Excited to see everybody jumping on. So we'll get started in a little bit, but as we get started, let's go ahead and check the chat and make sure that it works. So if you don't mind, please in chat, just let me know what city and state you're tuning in from, just to get us going and get us in a collaborative mood. I know that out in the world, it's been a little bit heavy lately. And so we're going to have fun today and we're going to explore some outside the box thinking and focus our time and energy the next 45 minutes on that. So we are live streaming via YouTube, and thank you so much for participating in chat. Excited to see people tuning in from all over. So thank you for joining us. We have somebody coming in from Riverside. As you come in, please let us know what city and state you're tuning in from. We're excited to be with you on this Friday. So let's go ahead and start kicking things off as people start to tune in. We have about 2 more minutes before the go live time. So I'll start by speaking to our topic for today. So we are going to be going over designing effective meetings, a manager's guide. So specific to our managers out there. And I think it's so incredibly important for managers to know just what power they have to bring to the table. And one of those areas really is learning how to design the things that we use every day with intention, and being intentional and aligning what we're doing that might seem very simple. It might even seem unimportant, but tying it into strategy and making sure that our time, our valuable, precious time, that it isn't wasted. And that's how we become of more utility. That's how we become more impactful and how we start to change the game around things that we do all the time, right? And seeing them from a different perspective. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get us dialed into designing effective meetings today and maybe thinking of meetings in a different way. So that'll be our focus. And so with that said, let's go ahead and start jumping in. So if you've never heard of us, we are Management Cues. And Management Cues is a neuroscience-backed, scientifically proven and tested company that puts together unique training experiences for managers. I myself am the CEO and founder of Management Cues, and I am obsessed with the management experience. So not necessarily just training and not necessarily just imparting knowledge or designing tools. I'm obsessed with what managers go through and their very real experiences. And that's how I came to create and launch Management Cues. So that's a little bit about us. Again, if you haven't met me before, I'm Dr. Mayra Austin, and I am thrilled to be here with you today. I think I may need this time with you as much as you might need it with me. And so I'm excited to get us going on this journey of seeing meetings in a different way or looking at them from a different perspective. So here we go. So what we're going to cover today is going to be an understanding of the neuroscience behind meetings. I find this to be critical because until we understand what's happening with our audience, we don't really know how to get the best out of them. We're going to look at modern day meeting challenges and what's making meetings boring, redundant, poor engagement taking place. All of those things hold us back as managers and leaders in the workforce. So we're going to take a look at what's common and what we're seeing in this current environment in business. And we're going to take a look at how to actually design better meetings and how to be intentional, starting with the agendas and how we form them. Then we're going to talk a little bit about AI because AI is going to be everywhere if it's not already there. And we're going to talk about how not to be intimidated by it and use it in a way that lends utility. And then we'll get into some action planning, putting some things in practice. And we are going to gift you with an agenda that's tailored for a specific outcome and a survey that you could use after any and every meeting to really make sure that you continuously keep your audience engaged and that you're always working towards optimal outcomes. Okay. All right, let's get to it. Here we go. Get ready. Buckle up. Okay, so for starters, it's important to understand why meetings matter. They can become redundant. They can become something that we just check the box for. They can become boring. They can be an absorption of time that's not necessary. So in order for meetings to not turn into that, we have to know what to look for. So the reason you should be having meetings is to coordinate action, to make decisions, or to build culture, right? So if your meetings aren't doing that, they probably shouldn't even happen. And that's the reality of it, right? So as managers, us knowing that should help us elevate our opportunity to advocate, to change things, or to just scrap it. Right? That should be something that we're comfortable doing and that we don't get scared to do. So when meetings are designed effectively, when they are in tuned with the needs, when people are engaged, it becomes more than just swapping information. And I think that that's really what we have to look at is how are we feeling about these meetings that we're having? Are they meeting those three things? Are they helping us coordinate action? Are they helping us make better decisions? And are we building culture with these meetings? So let's dive in. So when meetings are effective and they matter, they do these things. They align people and priorities so that teams move in the same direction. They drive decision-making by pulling diverse perspectives and expertise. They strengthen relationships through trust, connection, and collaboration. And they shape culture by modeling inclusion, accountability, and shared values. They boost performance when structured around focus, clarity, and outcomes. So again, this is a great self-check moment, right? Are our meetings doing that for us? And if not, then what are they doing, right? So let's take a look at going from brain drain to brain gain. Okay. And I love this comparison because I see it all the time. And throughout my career, I've experienced and observed and witnessed a whole lot of brain drain. Okay. So if you haven't in chat, please let me know what city and state you're tuning in from. We love to see where our pool of attendees are coming from. So when we're looking at brain drain, this is the problem. Okay. When we're having too many meetings, there is cognitive overload and there's no ifs or buts about it. That's what happens. When there is unclear purpose, it leads to wasted time and frustration. So I know for myself, I have experienced when I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm thinking, this is a huge waste of time, or I'm thinking we're getting nowhere, right? That's that feeling of frustration. Zoom hasn't always been around. It's been around in the recent decade, and there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue because you're multitasking and your engagement is actually reduced. So if you're actually sitting in this training with me right now and you're multitasking, you're lending to your Zoom fatigue. So I'm going to ask you to get the most out of this time with me and stop multitasking. And I know that that's hard, but this is part of being impactful and not experiencing that brain drain, right? So dominant voices are drowning out diverse perspectives, right? It becomes a one-person show. So let me know in chat if any of the brain drain moments are moments that you experience often while I go over what brain gain looks like. So brain gain is about the opportunity, right? Brain gain is a plus. You're actually gaining something from the meeting, from the exchange or transaction. So when brain gain starts to happen, there's usually a well-designed meeting that's boosting focus, creativity, and collaboration. You're opening those doors. There are clear objectives. There are faster decisions and better outcomes. And neuroscience is at work. So you're actually enacting a show of trust and connection, which creates an oxytocin release. So that helps you actually engage better. And we have some chat. So yes, lots of brain drain, too many meetings by the end of the day, frustrated that nothing has been accomplished. Yes, it's exhausting. It exhausts all of us. So today, we're going to learn how to do more with that, right? And move away from that brain drain because it really isn't helping you or anybody around you, right? So thank you for sharing. Great share there. And continue to share in chat. So when we release oxytocin, when we're experiencing this feeling of, yes, we're getting somewhere. Yes, there's clarity. Yes, we've got answers. You actually build stronger teams, which is why one of the things you want to look for when it comes to meetings is it building culture? Right? So meetings can drive alignment, innovation, and culture, but only if you're doing it right. So we're going to take a look at what doing right looks like today, and hopefully we'll reduce some of that brain drain, if not all of it, right? The goal would be to reduce all of it, but it takes practice and discipline, and that's not always easy when it's not 100% up to you, right? So here's a great reminder. Meetings aren't the enemy. Sometimes we get frustrated. So many meetings, right? Hate meetings. Meetings aren't the problem. What's the problem is that they're poorly designed, right? We don't spend enough time thinking about the design of a meeting. We kind of just walk into it, or we fumble through putting together a quick agenda. And if you disagree, please openly disagree with me in chat and say, I disagree. We don't do that. We come aligned. I spend time designing meeting agendas, right? Let's talk about that. Let's be honest. So the neuroscience of meetings is fascinating. And there is a lot of activity in our brain taking place during meetings, before and after. So let's take a look at that. So how the brain processes information in group settings is different than when you're processing and reflecting on your own. So that's the one thing that I think is important, is that there's a different type of brain activity happening when we are in meetings. So one, there's limited attention span. So focus peaks on short bursts, then it declines. And this is just how we respond from just a human standpoint. Cognitive load. Too much information at once actually leads to overload, not more retention. And so sometimes we these meetings with so much information and we think we're getting more out there, we're actually getting less. And so it's important to recognize that. There are social dynamics, and the brain is wired to seek belonging and safety and status in groups. So when we're in groups, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be heard, we want to be able to speak our point of view. But when that doesn't happen in a group setting, in a meeting, we're actually shutting some of these areas that we need them to be tuned into off. There are mirror neurons, right? So let me know in chat. Did you know about mirror neurons? And just say yes or no in chat. People pick up on energy, tone, and body language of others. So we have this mirroring going on, whether we recognize it or not. And sometimes it's very subconscious. And memory and retention. So stories, examples, and emotion help ideas stick. So when it's just one-way communication in a meeting, again, you're getting less of what you need from your audience. Reward versus threat response. So clarity and inclusion trigger motivation, right? So acknowledging the small wins, acknowledging milestones, clarifying where we're at in progress towards a goal, that actually activates the reward center in people's brain. And that helps release dopamine, which creates a motivational boost, right? Helps us be more engaged. It also helps us actually bring down stress levels. So that's the other part. When we're stressed, we don't think clearly, we make poor decisions, and the reality is that our outcomes are weakened by it. All of this is happening in a meeting. So when we're looking at cognitive overload, right? When we're looking at too many meetings and we're looking at too much information within those meetings, right? So the constant context switching exhausts working memory and focus, right? So being clear, concise is a really effective way to deliver meetings or practice and interact in meetings. Information overload doesn't fit when there's not enough processing time. So again, it's kind of like we're trying to fit too much in an area that isn't quite equipped for it. Lack of recovery time. This is such a game changer. If you allow recovery time before or after a meeting, that can be something that really shifts the momentum of what takes place after a meeting. And it prevents the brain from resetting when you don't have recovery time. So you need your brain to kind of reset and dial in to continue to be motivated throughout the day. Decision fatigue builds when every meeting requires choices or trades off. That means that when you're not focusing on processing time, that's when you start to get poor decision making if people are just jumping into action with what they were able to retain. And often it's not much, believe it or not. So the stress starts to kick in and workload feels unmanageable, which leads to those feelings of burnout. And then, of course, the cycle effect of an overloaded brain, which means more meetings because the meetings you did have were of such poor quality, right? So we get stuck in this kind of mode and we create culture around that ineffective way of doing things. So attention spans, timing, and memory retention. So this is a real snapshot. And if I were to take a screenshot of any, I would probably take it of this, right? Because this is what actually is happening. So attention peaks really are within the first 10 to 18 minutes, and then it slowly or steadily and sharply declines. So keep that in mind that really that's all people are really optimally retaining is for that time span. So meetings that are 2 hours, yeah, they're not quite doing what you think they are. Breaking information into chunks to reduce overload and boost focus is the way you want to go. Morning hours are best for analytical tasks. Creativity peaks later in the day, right? So keeping these things in mind, and we're going to talk about meeting outcomes. So keep this in mind. The brain retains information better when linked to emotion or stories. So give examples, do a little bit of storytelling, share a little bit of what you've experienced. Those things make a big difference when it comes to retention. Spaced repetition. So revisiting key points over time, that strengthens memory. Without breaks, retention stops. So include breaks within your meeting. 5-minute resets, refresh the brain. Literally, that's all it takes, right? So that could be something that's planned in. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening today in the business world because our business world has changed. We now have hybrid roles, we have fully remote roles, even in-person meetings have changed since COVID. So we have modern day challenges that weren't meeting challenges before, right? So we have to be aware that those are a thing, right? So let's take a look at that. Meeting challenges today. So the meeting challenges today, Zoom fatigue and hybrid meeting traps, right? So that's a thing. This could have been an email syndrome, right? It didn't have to be a meeting, but we're in the same routine and the same habit. We don't think about, being intentional or designing the meetings. Equity and inclusion meetings, who speaks and who doesn't. So some people have shut off because they have the comfort of the remote setting. And so they feel like they could tune out or they don't feel included to begin with, right? So that is common in a hybrid or remote environment. You can kind of fade into the background, right? Data, average meeting stats and productivity losses. So we're not really paying attention or tracking to what the losses look like. And that's a true challenge in a world where we're largely remote, right? So these are things that are currently challenging kind of the meeting space for us right now. So we also overdo it and spend too much time in meetings. So excessive time spent in meetings is a current problem. So the Journal and Financial Times did a study, and this was a snippet from it. And they said middle managers spend approximately 35% of their work hours in meetings, while senior leaders spend up to 50%. Yet only 17% of executives consider those meetings valuable. So out of curiosity in chat, I'd love to hear from you. What percentage of the meetings that you currently attend would you say you feel are valuable? So let me continue on, but please share because this is a really interesting metric. I find it to be true. And I think it's because we don't intentionally design. So lack of preparation and agenda clarity. Only 60% of meeting participants feel they have enough time to prepare. Furthermore, just 65% report that meeting minutes are consistently recorded and distributed. And only about 25% still lack access to necessary materials de facto, which hampers effective participation. And that's from the IBAB State of Meeting Management in 2024. So very current, the state of meetings that we're in. Zoom fatigue and cognitive overload. So virtual meetings, especially video calls, consistently generate more exhaustion than other formats. Mental fatigue is driven by nonverbal overload, such as maintaining prolonged eye contact, self-view, and interpreting multiple facial cues. Women report higher levels of virtual meeting fatigue than men. And that's from Shoshan and Wirt, 2022, in their study. Ineffective leadership in virtual settings. So overall virtual meeting effectiveness averages about 70%, with higher ratings directly linked to perceived strength of virtual meeting leadership, which means that when we're conducting virtual meetings, there's an active role to be played in terms of leadership. So let's get into the design. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of things to look for to bring focus to how well we prepare for the agenda in a meeting, what to think about, and also making sure that we're getting what we need from those meetings and not just wasting time and energy, right? So this will be the bread and butter for what you came for today. So 4 Ps you need to consider as a framework for meetings: purpose, people, process, and product. And so think about it like this, by asking yourself these questions. What's the goal of this meeting? And be very clear. It should be able to be summarized in no more than a sentence. It should be extremely clear. Otherwise, you really shouldn't have that meeting. People, who needs to be there? So who needs to be there is you need them to decide on something, you need them to provide feedback, or you need them to provide an idea or speak to a problem, right? That's somebody who needs to be there. Process. What format will drive results? Is the format of the meeting appropriate for the outcome that you need? And we're going to cover that today. Product. What are we walking away with? What did you take home with you after that meeting? And if it's nothing, that meeting probably shouldn't have happened. So, and these are things you want to revisit as you continue to make the most of your time. So I'd like to ask you all a question. Are all your meeting agendas structured the same way? And be honest. You can answer in chat or you could just answer quietly within yourself, but be very honest about this. Because the reality is that I would say that 98% of the managers I've trained, worked with, or developed structure their meetings exactly the same way for every single meeting that they either facilitate or that they have sat in, right? They see that pattern seems to be very consistent. So here we go. What should you do as a manager? So the reality is that if you want the meetings to be effective, every meeting should be structured around its intended outcome. So here are the different types of meeting objectives that really should make up the core of what you're meeting around. Decision-making meetings, brainstorming and innovation sessions, alignment and information sharing meetings, problem-solving meetings, one-on-one meetings, and celebration and recognition meetings. So these are traditional best practice, the types of meetings that managers should be having, and they should be having these at every level. So just to give you an idea, these are the types of outcomes that you should be looking for as you're coordinating, as you're creating culture, or as you're driving decision-making. So we're going to break each of these down to give you a format, a key element, and a neuroscience tip. Okay, and this should help you see meetings in a different way. So decision-making meetings. So for decision-making meetings, the format should be short, focused, and there should be pre-distributed data. The key elements of those meetings for them to be effective should be clear decision criteria, which means this is what we have to consider to make this decision. Limited participants. This should not be an entire department. It should be people who can actually make a decision. Time boxed agenda In my opinion, these meetings should not be more than 30 minutes. And the neuroscience insight, brains under time pressure default to habits, prime participants with data before the meeting. So it's important for this type of a meeting to make sure you tune into what you need their brain to do so that you get the appropriate outcome. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Brainstorming and innovation sessions. These are, by the way, my favorite. So formatting for this should be interactive. It should be open-ended and often in smaller groups or breakout rooms. I would say groups from 7 to 10 are the kind that I like for these types of sessions, but 3 to 4 work really well too. Key elements for this have whiteboards, sticky notes, digital collaboration tools are great. So make sure that that's all trained on, accessible, ready to go. And the neuroscience insight for this type of a meeting, creativity peaks in relaxed states, which is why when you're brainstorming, you should be having a little bit of fun. Use icebreakers and yes, frame it to reduce fear. Make it psychologically safe if you're looking for people to really bring their ideas to the table. Here we go, the alignment and information sharing meetings. So these meetings are great when there's disconnect between departments or managers or groups of team members. And this is actually the type of meeting that you're going to get a template for today. You're actually going to get an agenda that's structured for this type of meeting so that you have an example that you can actually apply right away and use in your environment. So the format for this one is town hall style, with app updates and cascading information, right? So different level of detail there. And the key elements are one-to-many communication, visuals, and Q&A at the end, right? So structured in this way, that's what creates those alignment points and makes it informational, but effective. And the neuroscience insight around that type of a meeting is that people remember stories and visuals better than raw data. So link updates to a narrative and think about that narrative. What do you want it to be? Okay. And then that kind of you build around. Okay. Problem solving meetings. Another great meeting to have when you're having challenges, bottlenecks, or things that are maybe not as fun to talk about. The format should be structured in a discussion type of setup and should include cross-functional groups from everybody that the problem touches is my recommendation. And then key elements, define the problem statement. So make sure that if you're having a meeting to solve a problem, that you have a problem statement to focus on and anchor around. Otherwise, that's exactly how the squirrel chases the nut, right? And goes down that rabbit hole. Evaluate the options and assign action items. And the neuroscience bit for this type of a meeting is that diverse perspectives trigger better solutions. That is just a fact. It's been proven by research over and over again. So it's important to have that cross-functional approach and actively invite quieter voices to participate. That means create a space to where everybody has something to share and contribute. And I always recommend doing it in more than one way, in written form, in verbal, in chat. Give people alternatives to participate in a way that they feel comfortable, okay? One-on-one meetings. I would say this is probably my second favorite type of meeting with my team members. The format should be private and should be conversational. So if you overly structure a one-on-one meeting, you're actually not going to drive the needle further. So keep that in mind. And the key elements of this type of meeting is bring a coaching and feedback and career development approach to it, because this is why you should be having this meeting. One-on-one meetings should not be a problem-solving meeting. That's a separate kind. And so it should be structured differently. The neuroscience insight for one-on-one meetings is this. Oxytocin release is only happening when there's trust in relationships, and it improves openness and motivation. So when your one-on-one meetings are overly loaded with information and updates and discipline, you're actually doing it the wrong way. Celebration and recognition meetings. If you're not having these meetings and you have culture, motivation, or engagement challenges, you probably should start. So the format is light, engaging, and appreciative. The key elements are storytelling, shout outs, sharing, and wins. And these meetings could be between 5 and 15 minutes. And they're still going to drive that neuroscience combustion going. And the insight there is recognition releases dopamine, fueling motivation and retention, right? This could be what sets the day for somebody if you're doing it right. So, all right. So here's the example you're going to walk away with, and you're going to get this emailed to you. So this is a meeting agenda. It's an example of what an alignment and information sharing meeting agenda should look like. And so you're going to get the template. You could play with it. You could use it. You can adapt it to what's going on. But here's what you want to keep in mind. The flow of a meeting is so incredibly important. You want to do your welcome. And in that welcome, you want to include a quick check-in, a tone setting. You want to state the purpose. We're here to align on X and share updates on Y. Like, you want to be that clear in your welcome. You want to include key updates by function and team. You want to make sure you're including everybody because this is a cross-functional alignment type of moment. You want to focus on progress, blockers, and relevant highlights. You want to use visuals and data to reinforce retention, right? Speak to facts and strategic alignment. You want to connect with updates to overall goals, priorities, or milestones. And you want to clarify interdependencies, where the teams overlap. Confirm action steps that need cross-functional alignment. Here's where we work together is a great way to say it. And then you want to close it out with the Q&A discussion that opens the floor for clarifications, feedback, and quick dialogue. And you want to capture the themes and the questions. So critical, right? That's how you actually solve and align. And then at the very end, make sure to open it up to recognitions and wins, open the floor, and make sure you close it out with a positive note, and then wrap up with next steps and make sure to summarize what was learned in that meeting and what decisions will be made, okay, or need to be made, and then confirm the next meeting date and time. Okay, so that's the way you do it for this kind of a meeting. And here is your best practice, right? So best practice for managers when it comes to meetings is this, and this is in general, right? So keeping this in mind is a great way to make the most of your meeting time. Design meetings with purpose. If you can't identify the purpose clearly, scrap the meeting. Distribute agenda and materials at least 24 hours in advance. Keep them short and structured. Use collaborative tools. You can use Miro, Notion, Teams, Google Docs for live input and follow-ups. Don't be afraid. Practice, interact, and then check with your team if the tools are something that helps them process, think, or bring ideas to the table. And with a clear alignment statement, we're leaving this meeting with, be clear on what you actually gained. Right? And if you didn't gain anything, you could say, I don't think we really gained anything. I think maybe we should scrap this kind of a meeting or redesign it, right? Cap meetings at 30 minutes, time box discussions, and use micro breaks if longer. So if 30 minutes, there's no way to do what you need to do in 30 minutes for the right type of meeting, then make sure you're including 5-minute breaks. I would say every 30 minutes, depending on how long your minute is. And that may feel excessive, but the reality is that the brain actually needs to reset to continue to retain. So if you don't do that, it's literally a waste of time. So rate, review, refine, and repeat. So critical. What gets measured gets improved, which is an old management adage, right? Meetings are no exception. Add an end of survey or feedback loop to your meetings. If you're not adding this, you will never get better. Retention will never improve. And again, you're continuing to cost the company money and not necessarily drive the needle. So it's important to make those distinctions. And the importance of this is documented and heavily researched. It promotes continuous improvement. It boosts efficiency. It enhances engagement. It supports accountability, and it builds a learning culture so that you're continuously working towards making an impact collectively. And it's not on you to drive that needle, right? We're moving together. So In addition to the template for the alignment type of meeting, you're going to get this survey. And it's a meeting follow-up survey, and it generally hits the type of feedback that we should be getting for meetings for any type of meeting. So you could actually tie it into any meeting you have. You could build it out on Zoom if you use virtual tools, or you could print it and hand it out. So here's how you want to use it. The survey design, like the meeting agenda design, it matters. There are surveys that are ineffective, that aren't necessarily proven, and don't give you the information that you need to actually make different decisions. So this one's actually tested, proven, vetted, and formatted the right way. So the degree of the question matters. So providing team members an opportunity to give feedback anonymously is what creates that psychological safety. So make sure you make it anonymous. And of course, this template will be emailed to you as well. So here are our key takeaways for today. Purpose drives design. Attention is limited. There's no way around it. There's nothing we could do about it. We're wired a certain way. Memory loves emotion and storytelling. So make sure you're storytelling in your meetings. Social safety fuels participation. So get creative with different ways of participating or bringing about participation. And energy is contagious. If you're frustrated, if you're bored, if you're disengaged, if you don't care about the meeting agenda design, they're not going to care about the meeting either or how they participate in it. Okay, so I'll open up to a quick Q&A. We are streaming live on YouTube, so I'll take a look in chat and see if there are any questions there. Feel free to unmute or enter any questions that you would like in chat as I take a look on the side. And if we don't have any questions, I will close it out in a second. Okay, so it looks like on YouTube there are no questions at this time. I'll give you guys a second if there's any questions before I move on. Okay, it looks like we're clear to go. So as we close out, as I mentioned, Management Cues designs and puts together a ton of different things. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate the feedback. So you're going to get access to a session recording, a copy of the deck, 2 really cool meeting tools that you could put to practice, and always feel free to email me with feedback if it worked, if you ran into an issue. I love that kind of interaction. I've included links on this deck that you're going to get to our different type of programs, our key product, which is our management planner, which encompasses understanding of the management and leadership functions in the role of management. We've linked our neuroscience studies in case you're a science geek and want to see how our science study was tested and who did it and all that good stuff. And of course, if you would like to speak with me, you can schedule a free consultation at any time. And we now have management membership programs, which include a ton of learning for a really affordable month-to-month price for either individual managers, teams of managers, or executives. And last and certainly not least, we are very proud to give back to our community. So our Management Cues planners actually have a percentage of proceeds being donated to the California Community Foundation, who supports families who were victimized by the LA wildfires. And that will continue to go and be active all through 2025 and maybe further. So that's a little bit about the support resources there. Reach out anytime. Thank you so much for participating and joining today. I appreciate your time. Have an amazing, amazing weekend. Take care.